Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another lesson in class. This is lesson 36. Does science understand that words carry secrets as well as power? So let's get into it. So, for those of you who are millennials or younger, so on and so forth, you'll understand some of the Harry Potter references that I'm about to make. See, because in Harry Potter, they have words that have power that are also carry, how should I say this, secrets along with them. If you remember when Snape was talking to Harry Potter during class, he used coded language to apologize and say sorry about his mother's death. When they use spells like Expelliarmus or Stupefy, those words with intention along with other things cast spells in order to, well, render a person, how do I say this? A wand useless, or, so on and so forth. So there's different ones. Loomis means to, well, light something up. Nox, to turn the light off, etc. And you could do this with your iPhone. For those of you that don't know, your iPhone actually has Harry Potter magical words assigned to it. So if you say, hey Siri, Loomis, your light will turn off. If you say, hey Siri, Nox, your light will turn off. So, i.e., Loomis will turn on, Nox will turn off. If I got that incorrect, you could go ahead and leave it down in the quotes. But does science understand that words carry secrets and power and how they can be used? Because let's face it, we went through creativity, logic, art, and now we're in science. And science kind of combines everything, makes it creative, gives it enough logic and replicatable so that everybody can share in the PC, the power and control. But some people tend to want to hold on to it, right? But think about the Harry Potter reference, right? Because, I mean, think about it. Expelliarmus, what does the spell do? And then, of course, if you were to translate that to our day and age, right? Or in the real world, when you get expelled from school, that renders you useless from, well, graduating and utilizing the license or degree so that you can go forward in life and utilize your knowledge. Think about that for a second, right? Because it does correlate to a certain extent. But let's go forward, right? So, what about in a courtroom, right? When attorneys or lawyers speak to judges and they have to get a message across while being, well, observed by everybody in the room, they may use certain phrases or jargon to the judge in order to either go into private chambers, say something in secret, or to say something that will not be held against them, i.e., above or under the rose. And this is something you can learn if you go into a public law library, or you can ask ChatGPT or Google's Gemini to assist you with the understanding of the terminology and how the power of words and the secrets that come along with them are used, right? Because if you hear a attorney say something like supra rosa, I think it is, right? Or supra rosa, right? Latin meaning above the rose, meaning everything can now be said in public, right? Or sub rosa, right? Or sub rosa, meaning under the rose, right? Meaning something is going to be said in secret that only us can, understand and should understand before we proceed, or whatever the case may be. It's like saying I plead the fifth, and etc., right? Or something similar to that case, because, well, when you plead the fifth, you have the right to remain silent. Obviously, they read that in the Miranda rights, if that's, the proper jargon for law enforcement officers. But in a courtroom, they may say something different. Every courtroom, every field, every industry has its own jargon in order to get words or a message across, either to the referee, the judge, or whomever is listening that has studied and has been attentive. Now, let's move forward. Point 3. What about in magic, right? So you hear words like when you see people like David Blaine, Chris Angel, or when kids are experimenting with magic, they'll say words like bravo or voila or abracadabra, right? But if you look at the word abracadabra and you look at where its origin comes from, well, it means I will create with what I speak, right? And if you understand that, you will understand the origins, where it comes from, and then, of course, well, what did the magicians and mages actually mean when they would say abracadabra, so on and so forth, or enunciate it a different way, right? It means that they were probably going to create something that they told you about, right? So I'm going to do this, etc., abracadabra, and now all of a sudden the rabbit is under the hat or in the hat or so on and so forth, or it disappeared, right? In the Matrix, you want to follow the white rabbit, right? Just like a magic trick, right? The white rabbit appears, you now wonder how that rabbit got there, then it disappears, and you trying to figure out during the whole show, where did the rabbit go? And then, of course, it pops up later on. Let's continue. What about in law enforcement? So in law enforcement, you have radio chatter, and radio chatter would be something like 10-4 or 10, what's my 20, etc., meaning what's my location, or 10-4, meaning I understood, or hua, or roger, or copy, etc. All those words actually mean something. It's not just something that you can use to sound cool because you play too much Call of Duty, or you hung around too many military people, learned a little bit of jargon, and now you want to say stuff like, oh, I'm in rear with the gear, or so on and so forth. You know, it's very interesting because sometimes people don't always understand the words that are coming out of their mouth when they're speaking to certain individuals. Funny story, there was apparently a video that circulated because a law enforcement officer told a Marine or a soldier, someone in the military, to cover them. See, cover for us means something completely different. The military personnel ended up taking out everybody that was an enemy, and the cop looked at him and said, I said cover me, not kill everybody. Well, the term means something different, right? See, in the military, cover me means, well, take out anybody that's trying to shoot me, etc., because it's a hazardous environment. See, in different types of areas, such as local law enforcement, it means make sure nobody shoots me and cause enough distraction and try not to kill anybody, right? Reason being is because you can't get information out of dead people. So you want to keep as many people alive so that you can get as much information as possible in order to solve the problem at hand. All right? Next point. What about in the military? And as you know, I use notes. So I have a little outline here, so on and so forth, just to give me little bullets to, go in a certain order so that people understand stuff, so I could line stuff up perfectly, right? So what about in the military? Obviously, you heard me say Roger earlier. What about copy? What about simplify? What about, what are the other ones? Hua, right? If you saw the movie with Matthew McConaughey, one of the bridesmaids, if I remember correctly, the father-in-law or the father was former military. He would say hua, and the daughters and the ladies would say that stood for heard, understood, recognized, and acknowledged, which makes perfect sense, right? But in essence, people only know what you tell them. So if you tell them hoorah means heard, understood, recognized, and acknowledged, and it's a military term, then they will understand the acronym and the definition to it, and then they will make that association and keep that attachment until they learn something new, right? So think about that. Now, what about when playing Call of Duty, right? See, in Call of Duty, they have, well, cheat codes, and then, of course, they use the lingo and stuff like that. But if you study history, Call of Duty is based upon different, scenarios of the military. And back in the day, they had something called wind talkers, right? What were wind talkers but people that can literally speak on air, i.e. the media, i.e. through radio, in a coded language in order to get messages across without the enemy finding out. Let me do a mic check real quick. All right, we're still good. So Think about that. So you have wind talkers, and by all means, you can either use ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or just Google itself or history books and go to a library and look up what were wind talkers. This came from traditions of Native American teachings because they were beating us at one point, right? And they utilized their skills of wind talking in order to pass messages and to succeed in battle. Now, what about in certain places? Right around the world, they have their own jargon, they have their own secrets, they have their own words, etc. And those words mean something, right? Such as in places like Puerto Rico, you would say agua viene. And when you say agua viene, that means the police are coming. Not water is coming, that police are coming. Why? Because they wear blue uniforms, right? So when you hear agua viene or somebody says it, you will understand police are coming and you understand to leave, so on and so forth, depending on the environment or the location that you're in within Puerto Rico. And I'm sure other countries have their own jargon. Now, what about in science? Well, let's talk about the ingredients in food that have Latin terms and all these, different things. You have your potassium, your calcium, and all these things that people know about. But if you look at other ingredients, you'll start to see that there's something like gum in there. But what does that mean? High fructose corn syrup. What is that, right? Or dioxy something, blah, 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 right? And it's this long, intricate, 16-letter word that nobody really knows unless you're a scientist or a chemist or, somebody who studied biology and all this other stuff. And you're like, oh, this, and this means this. Right? So you can utilize AI platforms now to help you decipher and decode and understand not only what you're putting into your body, but what they're putting into the food and the drinks that you are consuming so that you can prevent other things from happening down the line, right? What is it? Diet Coke or whatever, Diet Pepsi, some of it has aspartame in it, and people may understand that. But if you work out and you're fit and you sweat, so on and so forth, sweating is a process that the body goes through in order to release toxins. So the harder you work out, the more cardio or HIIT training that you do, right? Rapid movements in a short amount of time with maximum effort, it will produce sweat, obviously, and your body and metabolism not only speed up, but it forces your body to get rid of and expel toxins, right? You expelliarmus the toxins, so on and so forth. So let's continue, right? Because this is, I think, fascinating because most people know words and they'll say stuff and it's like somebody learning a language, right? What are the words that you want to use when you hear a different language? Oh, what are the curse words, or what are this and what's that and stuff, so on and so forth, right? But if the words possess power and secrets, well, why is it called a curse? Is it because you're cursing at somebody, you're putting a curse on somebody, or you're saying something, and curse is normally tied to negative, so something that's negative, not positive. So you learn the curse words to trigger negative energy in somebody, to rile them up and to release your negativity upon them with your words, with your sword, with your communication style, in order to get your point across and to address the matter. Think about it. Now, can words dictate the level of understanding one has? Very much so, and it's used so as such when it comes to the educational system. See, in the military, we have something called breaking it down Barney style. And if you've ever seen Barney or Blue's Clues or Nickelodeon Face, so on and so forth, you would understand what I'm talking about, right? Because if you're able to simplify not only the word, but the definition, then everybody could understand it, and then it makes more sense to them, and they become more powerful because of their level of understanding. See, there's a movie called Margin Call, and there's a part in there where a gentleman speaking, one of the actors, he was from the movie Aragon. You have the gentleman that played Patrick Jane in the TV show The Mentalist. You have the gentleman that plays Spock in Star Trek in there, and a couple others. And the gentleman from the movie Aragon, who was also in Kingdom of Heaven, says, "Speak to me as though I am a child," meaning make it simple. You don't have to use complex words. We're all, grown-ups here and big people. Just break it down Barney style. He doesn't say that part, but he says, "Speak to me as though I am a child," right? i.e., break it down Barney style is another way of saying it, right? We just say it differently in the military. So you have to understand that every industry has this, right? Remember, in past videos, I say a doctor could come out and, if they know you're educated, be very specific with the type of surgery that they're going to perform. I need to perform a cardio bypass. I got to instill a stent, so on and so forth. There is a clogged artery, right? Or they can just say we have to do heart surgery and put a little device in there to open up the artery to allow more blood flow. Both mean the same thing. However, one is on a higher level when it comes to the vocabulary and terminology. And if you do not understand that vocabulary and terminology, well, then you're going to not only get lost in the sauce, but as in Ocean's 12, the movie, the part with Matsui, they pull a lost in translation, because since you don't know, a lot of stuff will fly over your head if you just say yes, whatever, just to keep the conversation moving, which is what most people tend to do, right? They'll just be like, you got it? Yeah, Do you actually have it? Or are you just saying yes so that the conversation can move forward? Remember, the trick to life is understanding. Knowledge is great, right? You can understand why 2 plus 2 and 2 times 2 equals 4, but why, right? How does it work that way, right? Just think about that for a second, right? Does 1 plus 1 equal 3? It depends on the context, because when a mommy and a daddy come together and they have, intimacy, they create a third body. Now there's 3 of them, so 1 plus 1 can equal 3 in that context. In mathematics, however, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Think about it. Let's go forward. So, what about in music, right? So you remember the song as a child, Ring Around the Rosie, so on and so forth, right? See, when things are said a certain way, whether it's with pitch, tone, or by certain individuals, or sung in melody, it tricks the brain into thinking something else. See, but if you understand the story and the song Ring Around the Rosie, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, they all fall down, that's talking about the Black Plague and other things that happen that are chaotic, that they flipped into a positive, and they have children singing it, and everybody is singing the song, not understanding that it's literally about a plague. It's about, disaster and chaos. But because of the pitch, the tone, and who's delivering the message, it's looked at a little bit differently. So remember that when you hear certain things. Remember, do not listen to respond, listen to understand. That is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, which I suggest everyone reads, because most people want to respond. They do not want to understand, because, well, as such in life, once you become either complacent or do not want to learn anymore, you start to listen to respond instead of trying to understand, because understanding requires learning, it requires attention, and it requires time, right? And engagement. So if you think about it like the acronym T, time, energy, and attention, right? That's what understanding does. And the brain can only put out so much energy unless you express your free will and force it to do so, like when you go to the gym, like when you go running or exercise. 1 second, we got somebody coming. So, continuing on with this, right? Because science can use certain words, certain technologies, and things like that. But if AI is, being utilized as well to, unlock communication, to also break down everything and then share that secret or those secrets with the rest of the world if somebody asks the proper question. And I don't know if you heard, ChatGPT and Meta are both now reporting people to law enforcement based upon, not only what they have, what conversations they have with AI, but what they're actually saying. Well, then you might want to be weary of some of the things and start asking more questions as to, does privacy exist? Or is that an illusion? Or is that an assumption, right? Is freedom free? And if so, then is freedom of speech free? And if it's free, then is it, deemed that you can spy on somebody? You can overhear their conversations. And is this a two-way street, or is this a one-way street where somebody will listen to everything, but they won't share anything in return? And then when you catch them or you find out some of their secrets, all of a sudden it's no longer okay because their ass is on the line. I mean, think about it. ChatGPT made $500 billion, right? Facebook makes crazy amounts of money and it's floated on the stock market. Where's all this information going? Why are they doing such? And well, why didn't they use it with people like that were on the Jeffrey Epstein list, Diddy trial, going through everybody else's, the legal cases? Because you have, well, AI, which means it can do behavioral analysis. And, well, that based upon speech and search results and everything else could determine if you're going to break the law or not, depending if they're utilizing that type of technology, like the movie Minority Report. Remember that movie with Tom Cruise where they had people like that could see the future and stop people before they committed a crime, and then they realized that it was sometimes faulty? Think about that. So let's go forward, right? There's 3 more points, and then I'm going to hit you with the bonus. So what about the tech and coding industry, right? So if I put 000 FFF, what color is that? If you're into web design, right? Or if you utilize Canva or, Adobe and things like that, you would know that that 6-digit code would feed into either an RBG or a hex, right? In order to change the colors based upon how it's set up, right? So you can use the 6-digit code 000000. That'll give you one color, FFF, or F 6 times with a hashtag in front. That'll give you the color white. The other one gives you the color black, etc. So if you put those together 50-50, would that be gray? Think about it, right? Because, well, if we use technology and they talk about the matrix, well, then the internet is a part of it. And if you don't know how to speak the language of it, you will not understand what's right in front of your face. Remember, the media and television use RBG, red, blue, and green, to display all the colors that are in front of you. Back in the day, they used to say what's on the air. Now they say what's on TV or what's in the media or what's on social. Remember the vocabulary terms and how it changes throughout history so that you could stay not only along with the patterns, but you could pick up on other things that are being said as well. So what about within poetry, right? What's in a name that we call a rose that smells so sweet, right? Now, if you're into Shakespeare, you would understand where that came from. If you've seen the 90s version of X-Men, you would remember Beast actually quoted that when he was hanging upside down on a tree. Wolverine came around. I think he was reading Midsummer's Dream. And he said, what is in a name that which we call a rose that smells so sweet, right? Quoting Shakespeare, right? So think about it. What does that mean, right? If you pick a rose and call it a flower, is it the same thing? And does it still smell the same? So what's in a name that which we call a rose that smells so sweet, right? What's in the name, right? Do you have a name? If so, what does it mean? Does that pertain to you? Or, is it just a label and you can change your name like people do on social media with usernames, so on and so forth, so that you can identify yourself differently than the rest of the people out there, right? Making yourself unique, as we would say in business, so that you have a unique selling proposition when you're on social media speaking to others, right? And then lastly, what about within story to paint a picture in one's mind, right? So if you understand that storytelling is actually how we also used to learn and pass down information along with history before the written word, but even with the written word, ask yourself a couple things. If you don't believe that words carry secrets and power, when somebody tells you a story and it puts a picture into your head, whether you're reading a book or somebody speaking, right? Where did that picture come from? What does it look like? Can you draw it, right? Did you get it from a movie, Did your brain magically create it? Did it come from a television show? Did it come from a piece of artwork? As they were describing anything, did it start to formulate pictures and images in your head, either based upon past experiences or not, right? This is the power of words. This is when they say planting the seed. You can plant a seed of success or a seed of doubts, but in the end, someone is always planting a seed. If they like to play devil's advocate, they will continue to plant negative seeds and then wonder why people respond negatively, right? If they don't play devil's advocate, let's say they play God advocate, right? Then they will spread story that plant seeds of positivity. And if you've ever seen a science experiment where people start talking to plants and other things and how it reacts to negative words with energy attached to it, meaning your emotions, because it's energy in motion. When you get emotionally triggered, if it's negative or positive, your heart rate speeds up, your pulse increases, it flows, throughout your body, moving blood around, and that is your energy in emotion that triggers you to respond in a positive, neutral, or negative mentality, depending on the conversation and the seed that is trying to be planted, that wants to grow or is being watered to grow, depending on your environment and those speaking to you and with you. So as we wrap this up in lesson 36, what's the meaning of 36? Right? You guys may have remembered this from past lessons in class and logic and possibly a little bit of art, but let's talk about 36, right? So you have a triangular number. And if you remember the back of a dollar bill, there's the all-seeing eye and a triangle, so on and so forth, etc., right? And then, of course, 3 plus 6 equal 9. That's Nikola Tesla's 369 theory, so on and so forth, right? You have 3 trimesters, etc. And then, of course, it takes 9 months to make a baby. It's a long story. We're the 3rd rock from the sun. Where's the 6th one? What's it called? And is Pluto a planet or not? And if it's not a planet, why does it take, 9 months to make a baby? And then there's apparently 9 planets in the sky. So, if we're not a direct reflection of our universe. Then we have the pentagonal link tied to the golden triangle, which is also linked to the golden ratio, which some of you heard me speak about this in art or logic and creativity, right? Fibonacci sequence and all that. Circular motion, 1/10, etc. The element 36, krypton, right? So don't you think it's funny that Superman worked with Batman, but Superman's weakness was kryptonite, a green rock, right? See, I think of it as money, and money is time. If you look at Doctor Strange, he had a gold link chain on with the time stone in it that was also green, right? And you work every day, unlike Bruce Wayne. He didn't have to work because he inherited everything that his family built, so he didn't have green as his weakness, right? He was human, he had all the money in the world, so on and so forth, which meant he had more time, right? So just like, Doctor Strange protecting the time stone that is very valuable, don't mess with people's time, what's it called, freedom and money, you'll be perfectly fine. But if you mess with someone's time, you eventually affect their money. And if you mess with their money, then you also affect their freedom, because they're not able to express themselves freely with the green currency that, you get provided with when you go to work, unless you have another currency or some type of means of value to barter or trade with. So remember that. And then, of course, there is the 36 deacons within the Egyptian constellations. For those of you who like to talk about star seeds and star signs and zodiac signs and all this, this is not just me regurgitating past information. This is past information that has been well spoken about and by several scholars, doctors, peoples with master's degree, other people with bachelor's degrees, and then of course children, when they watch movies, they get educated on the constellations as well. They just may call them a different thing. Remember, a gat back in the day was a pistol. Now kids say gat when a girl has a large gluteus maximus. So Till next time, my friends, if you think words have power, carry secrets, go ahead and, leave some of your words down below in the comments. I really don't care which ones you use. However, I will see you on the next lesson of class, which will be lesson 37, titled The Visions of Science. Till next time, my friends, take care. Have a good one. Mwah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.